I'm Alice. Last winter, when a snowstorm swept across Michigan and the temperature dropped below 10 degrees Fahrenheit, I wired $6,400 to replace the furnace in my parents' house in the suburbs of Grand Rapids. Right before the pipes nearly froze solid. No one asked me to do it. In fact, they didn't even know the furnace had failed. But I knew. I always knew. That year, my father, Martin, had just recovered from spinal surgery and could barely walk. My mother, Carol, had advanced arthritis, her fingers too stiff to hold a phone for more than a minute. They couldn't get down to the basement to check the system, and my brother Ben was working on music in the garage, meaning he was playing guitar and live streaming riffs that barely got any views. It was also me, the year before, who paid the full $3,890 in property taxes after they forgot and nearly got hit with a penalty. I still remember I was in the middle of a board meeting when Mom texted, "Call me when you have a sec, no rush." That was her code red. I opened the banking app and made the payment before the county flagged their account. I never told anyone about these things. No one knew I had to cancel a trip to Texas just to scrape together money for their car insurance in 2021. No one knew I quietly paid for 3 of Mom's prescriptions over 6 months when her Medicare coverage had issues. I knew those prescription codes better than the pharmacist did. My parents always called me stable. They liked that word like it was a personality trait rather than the result of working nearly 60 hours a week for 12 straight years, never taking more than 2 days off in a row. To them, I was the child they didn't need to worry about. The one who never failed, the one who didn't call crying halfway through the month, the one who didn't burden them, the one who didn't disappoint. I remember Mom once said, "Alice, you're such a blessing. I've never had to lose sleep over you." I smiled and said, "Thanks, Mom," even though in my head I wondered, did she ever stop to ask why she didn't have to? Ben was different. He'd dropped out of college twice, once in psychology, once in music studies. He was always in a phase of finding himself. Whenever he ran into trouble, the whole family mobilized like he was the center of a storm and everyone else had to brace. Me? I only came up when a solution was needed. One summer, I visited and found the lawn knee-high. The mower was broken, Dad couldn't fix it, and Ben said he had a guitar wrist strain. I called a landscaping service, prepaid for a month, then climbed a ladder and cleared the gutters myself. No one asked me to. When I got back to Chicago, Mom texted, "The house looks great. Ben must have cleaned up, huh?" I read it and let out a dry laugh. I didn't help to be praised. I helped because it was my home, my family. But over time, I started to wonder, did anyone really see what I was carrying? Or did they only see the things I made disappear? That house. I pulled it back from the brink more than once. But they never named me in their stories of being saved. They just said, "Good thing we have Alice. She's resourceful." Then immediately moved on to talk about Ben's latest idea for a soundtrack to some indie animated film. I stayed silent for years, but something in me started to crack one morning in March when I happened to notice a beige folder on the dining table, and inside it, the quiet confirmation that everything I'd done had never been seen as worth naming. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house as usual, carrying a bag of prescriptions from Walgreens that I had paid for in advance. 3 types of blood pressure meds for my mom, arthritis medication, and a bottle of multivitamins she always forgot to take. My dad had texted earlier asking if I could help scan some documents for his new insurance application. The printer at their house was ancient, constantly jamming, and he never remembered where the power button was. I didn't think twice when I walked into the dining room and saw a stack of papers laid out neatly on the table, along with a scribbled note from Dad. "Scan all of these. I'm on the phone with Medicare." I sat down and started feeding pages into the machine. A few medical statements, a couple of utility bills, a letter from the bank. Then I saw it. A beige folder, thicker than the rest, sealed and labeled in Mom's handwriting. Will. Notarized copy. I didn't open it right away. I sat there for nearly a minute, staring at the cover, my mind blank. But then, like an involuntary reflex, I pulled it open. I remembered very clearly I had just paid almost $2,500 in property taxes for them last week. 3 months before that, I covered the plumbing repair when the upstairs toilet overflowed into the hallway. I figured if I was old enough to shoulder every emergency, I was old enough to know what they planned for the future. And the truth was this: the entire estate, the fully paid off 3-bedroom house, a savings account worth roughly $118,000, and a life insurance policy, all of it was left to Benjamin D. Harrington, born in 1993, unemployed, currently residing at the same address, this very house. My name appeared just once in the footnotes. We love both of our children equally and trust they will care for one another in the spirit of family. I read that line over and over again. It was polite, it was clean. It didn't say, "We're cutting out our eldest daughter," but it also didn't acknowledge anything I'd done. It felt like writing, "We trust Alice will keep carrying the weight, no reward needed." I don't know how long I sat there. The scanner light kept blinking, the motor humming in the background. I could hear Dad in the living room talking on the phone about deductible limits and coverage caps. I stood up, took the folder, and walked into the living room. Dad looked back and smiled. "You finished scanning?" I held up the will. "What's this, Dad?" His smile disappeared instantly. I had never seen Martin Harrington, who taught U.S. history for over 20 years at the local high school, so silent. He stared at the folder like it was a grenade someone had pulled the pin from. He said, voice dry. "You weren't supposed to read that, Alice." He didn't answer. He sighed and slowly set his phone down. "It's not what you think." Still silent. I wasn't imagining anything. It was in blue ink on white paper, with a notary stamp right there. "I get it," I said, oddly calm. "You and Mom believe Ben needs it more than I do." He looked down. "You're stable, Alice. You've got a good job. You don't need it." "You don't have to say anything else," I cut in. Soft, but final. "I understand. Perfectly." He nodded. No excuses, no apology. I stepped out onto the porch, where the wooden swing I had assembled the previous spring was gently swaying in the April breeze. That day, I had also called a contractor to fix the collapsing front step. Ben had said he was allergic to sawdust. As always, I had reached for my wallet like a machine that didn't question commands. I sat on the swing, eyes drifting to the backyard. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. My chest tightened, not from anger, but from emptiness. For the first time in my life, I wondered, if I stopped showing up, would they even notice? The wind brushed through my hair, carrying the soft clink of the wind chime in the corner of the porch. I remembered. I had ordered it from Etsy, a Christmas gift. Ben had given Mom a handwritten card with 3 awkward lines of rhyme. She said she loved both gifts equally. I closed my eyes. There was no more pain in me, only something growing stronger, awakening. I was still sitting on the porch when my mother, Carol, opened the door and stepped out. She was wearing the faded pink cardigan I gave her for Mother's Day 2 years ago, the tag still attached because she had forgotten to cut it off. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, twisting the sleeve in her hands. I could hear her breathing more clearly than her words. "Alice," she began, her voice so quiet I almost thought I imagined it. I didn't turn around. I let the wind brush across my face in place of an answer. "We didn't mean for you to find out that way," she said, then sat down beside me, keeping just enough distance to avoid meeting my eyes. I didn't respond. No nod, no shake, just silence. "Ben, he's never had the kind of stability you do," she continued, eyes fixed on the wooden step below us. "He struggles. He's lost. I thought you'd understand that." I clenched my fists, nails pressing into my palms. "You thought I'd understand being erased from my own family's will?" "It wasn't erasure," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "We just believed you wouldn't need as much as he does." "Believed," I repeated. believed the only child who paid for the roof repairs, property taxes, blood pressure meds, wouldn't need anything at all. She turned away. A gust of wind blew her hair across her glasses, and she slowly untangled it, dragging the silence a few more seconds. Finally, she whispered, "Because your father and I co-signed a loan for Ben for an independent animation project." I turned sharply to her. "How much?" She didn't answer. "Mom, I'll ask again. How much?" 35,000. Her voice barely came out. I stood up. A number. Not a guess, not a feeling, not vague favoritism. A real debt, with real dollars, signed by my real parents. And me? I was only there when the fridge short-circuited, when the sink clogged, when the washer stopped mid-cycle. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the logic echoed perfectly in my head. Ben needs, so he gets. Alice is capable, so she does. I walked down to the lawn, circling the old oak tree where Ben once carved B+L with my car key, while I was napping on the couch. I'd yelled at him for that. My dad said, "He's just a kid." Ben was 21 at the time. I walked back up the steps. Mom was still sitting there, eyes unfocused. "Did you ever stop to ask," I said, voice even, "why I never needed to call mid-month asking for $200 like Ben?" She stayed silent. "Because I'd been cleaning up messes since I was a teenager," I continued. "I didn't choose that role, but every time Ben failed, I patched it up. Every time you needed something done right, I did it." Mom bit her lip, as if wanting to say something but finding no words. "I get it now," I said. "It's not because Ben deserved more. It's because you tied yourselves to him, with that loan, with expectations even you don't believe in. And me? I'm the invisible collateral you assumed would never collapse." A soft sound came from the door. My dad was standing there, one hand on the frame, his face blank with exhaustion. He didn't step outside, just stood like a shadow, witnessing a verdict. "It's not that simple, Alice," he said. "No, Dad, you're right," I replied. "It's much simpler. You chose to keep this house by trading away your daughter, and once the paperwork was signed, everything under Ben's name, you came back expecting me to pay the utility bills like nothing happened." No one said a word, and that said more than anything else could. I didn't need to hear more. No apologies, no justifications. I walked into the house, grabbed the bag of prescriptions I had left on the kitchen counter, and headed straight to my car. The sun was starting to lower, casting a warm glow over the house I once thought was home, now just a fragile shelter built on debt and deliberate silence. I started the engine and didn't look back. 3 days after that afternoon, I walked out of my parents' house. I opened my banking app and canceled every automatic payment. The $325 a month I'd been auto-depositing to cover their utility bills stopped. Mom's CVS Care Pass prescription schedule deleted. The Instacart account that sent groceries every Friday afternoon paused indefinitely. No announcement, no explanation, not a single warning line. Just a silence. Deliberate, calculated. I thought they'd notice immediately, but they didn't. The first week passed in an eerie quiet. No texts, no calls, no emails. I figured maybe they really did believe I was so stable that I'd reboot like a vending machine after a power cut. On Saturday morning of the second week, while I was having breakfast with a friend at a lakeside cafe, my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. "Alice, the gas bill's higher this month. Can you check the account? See if we're covered?" I set the phone down, didn't reply. In my mind, a familiar voice echoed, "Help, like always." That afternoon, another message came, from Mom. I forgot the low-sodium crackers. Ben didn't remember either. "Are you stopping by Whole Foods?" I didn't open it, left it unread. By week 3, the break in rhythm began to rattle them. This time, Mom didn't include a greeting. "Home insurance is due. You usually send it around this week, right?" I read the message and typed a single line. "Ask Ben. It's his house now." I didn't wait for a response. Didn't wonder what they'd say next. I flipped the phone face down on my desk and returned to my meeting like nothing had happened. That night, while reviewing project notes under the soft yellow light in my 10th floor apartment, the phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another message popped up. Don't be like this, Alice. We need to talk. But I knew what talk meant. It wasn't conversation, it was recovery. They wanted me to slide back into place. The fixer, the scheduler, the silent backbone. The one who kept the machine running so no one else had to get uncomfortable. The next day, Ben chimed in. Alice, this is getting out of hand. Just help them like you always do. Don't turn this into a drama. I replied with one line. You're the one they chose, so step up and act like it. No reply. I started sleeping better. No waking up at 2 a.m. to a text from Mom asking about a password. No scrolling through their payment due dates before my own calendar. I had breakfast alone, read weekend novels, even planted 2 new basil pots on the balcony, something I kept putting off because I had to run back home and cook dinner for Mom and Dad. A week later, my bank app notified me of a Zelle request. Amount $2,850. Memo. This month's mortgage plus late penalty. Urgent. No greeting, no explanation, not even a please. My tap declined. 3 minutes later, Dad called. I didn't answer. An hour after that, Mom texted. Annalise, if you don't help, we could lose the house. I stared at the screen for a long while, then quietly set the phone down and kept cooking dinner. For the first time in years, I cooked just for myself. Not to drop off later, not to freeze for them, not to portion out for anyone else. That night, I stood at my living room window, looking out over the city. The soft gold of the streetlights made everything feel still, but inside me, it wasn't stillness. It was change. Not an argument, not a dramatic exit, just withdrawal. A space that had always been filled by duty was finally going quiet, and I let it stay quiet. I thought that after I declined the mortgage transfer, they'd stay silent, but I was wrong. Thursday morning, while waiting for coffee at the cafe near my office, my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. I rarely used the app, but kept it to follow old community groups and college friends. The screen showed a familiar line. Carol Harrington has updated her status. Curious, I opened it. The first sentence stopped me mid-bite. We've spent our lives loving, raising, and sacrificing for our children, but sometimes even that's not enough. Below was a photo of my mother standing on the front porch, the one where I'd installed the swing, trimmed the lawn, and fixed the gutters in silence. The lighting was soft, evoking sadness, pity. Within an hour, the post had dozens of likes. My aunt on Dad's side commented first. Carol, you're such a wonderful mother. Not every child knows how to appreciate that. A distant cousin I hadn't seen since Thanksgiving in 2012 wrote, This breaks my heart. Kids these days only think about themselves. I hope you find comfort. I scrolled further, and then I saw it. Ben, my younger brother, had reshared the post with the caption, Family isn't a condition, it's a commitment. No matter how tired I get, I'll never give up. Beneath his post was a parade of moral supporters. Ben, you really are the light of that family. You've sacrificed so much. I hope things get better for you and your parents. I read each comment. My eyes locked on the screen, hands cold. These people, they had no idea that their light once pulled $7,000 from our parents' account to fund an animation company with no website, no tax ID. They didn't know who paid the utility bill when our service was shut off in 2019. No one knew, because I never told them. And now, I was the ungrateful daughter. No one asked me anything. No one messaged to fact-check. They swallowed a pre-packaged narrative. The stable daughter had turned her back, and the struggling son was the hero keeping the family afloat. I wasn't angry. I just felt hollow. That night, I opened my laptop, thinking I might post a short explanation, but my hands froze above the keyboard. What would I even say? That I had paid nearly $30,000 over 6 years for debts that weren't mine? That I turned down a job in Austin to stay nearby, just in case the water heater leaked again? Those truths, typed out, would only make me look like I was defending myself. And the truth is, I didn't need to prove anything anymore. What I needed was peace. I closed the laptop, turned off the light. But just before bed, a message came in. From Rachel, the cousin I had once been closest to. Are you okay? I don't know exactly what's going on, but I'd like to hear your side if you want to talk. That single message brought tears to my eyes. Maybe not everyone was so easily swept up in a made-up story. Maybe a few people still knew not to rush to judgment. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the screen for a long moment, then gently set it aside. Monday morning, I was getting ready to step into a meeting when the office phone rang. The receptionist's voice came through, a little tense. Ms. Harrington, there are 3 people at the front desk claiming to be your parents and brother. They say it's a family emergency. I stared at my computer screen for a few seconds, then answered, simply, tell them I'm not available, and I didn't schedule any meeting with them. They said they'll wait. I hung up, took a deep breath. My hand tightened slightly on the armrest. So, when social media couldn't rescue them from their financial mess, they reverted to the old tactic. Close in, cling on, corner me into confrontation. I didn't run. I finished my presentation, signed an internal contract, then headed down to the lobby. They were standing there, just past the glass doors. My father in a wrinkled white shirt, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed like he was waiting to command. My mother clutching her purse in both hands, dark circles under her eyes. Ben, arms crossed, leaning against a granite column, staring at the floor. I stepped out of the elevator, no rush, no shock. Alice, my mother called out as soon as she saw me. Her voice trembled, unclear whether from the cold or the fear of what she suspected was coming. I didn't say a word. I stood 3 steps away, far enough to keep boundaries, close enough to not look like I was hiding. My father spoke first. We need to talk. I looked directly at him. And there's nothing to talk about? He frowned. You'd really let us lose the house over a bruised ego? I tilted my head. And you really thought I'd stand still while being erased from my own family? My mother took a step forward, pleading. Don't be like this, Alice. I know you're hurt, but this wasn't intentional. I gave a soft laugh. Not intentional? Carefully wording the will, signing off on Ben's loan, those were all just accidents? Ben cut in. You're blowing this out of proportion. I never asked for any of this. I didn't even know what they wrote in those papers. I turned to him for the first time in years, not looking away. But you accepted it, didn't you? The assets, the title, the role of selfless son. Ben looked down. My mother gripped her sleeve tightly and repeated, You've always been strong, Alice. We thought you understood. All these years, you've never... I cut her off. Because I'm strong, you thought I didn't need anything. Not to be chosen, not to be thanked. Not to be remembered? My father grew impatient, his tone sharpened. We raised you, sent you to school. Isn't it petty to count debts at your age? I nodded slowly. Then consider everything I've done over the years as settling that tab. I don't owe anything now. My mother's eyes welled up. I looked at her, my voice firmer this time. You didn't lose me when you rewrote the will. You lost me the moment you believed I would never walk away. No one said another word. No tears, no hugs, no negotiations. I stepped back. I have a meeting. This is a workplace, not a stage for family theatrics. I'd appreciate your respect. I turned and walked back inside. The sound of the glass door closing behind me felt like the period at the end of a chapter. 2 months after that confrontation in the office lobby, I got an email from the old property alert system I had once set up for my parents, back when I still handled everything for them. The subject line was crystal clear. Foreclosure notice for 2487 Elmwood Drive. I stared at the screen. Not surprised, not angry, just Confirmation. I didn't need to read further to know what had happened. Ben had burned through it all. They were out, and the house, where I once cleaned gutters, replaced bulbs, fixed doorknobs, was now in the bank's crosshairs. Thought I'd feel pain, but the first sensation was relief. I didn't call, didn't email, didn't try to salvage anything. I didn't reach out to our old lawyer to ask for forbearance. I simply shut the laptop, stood up, grabbed my coat, and stepped out of the apartment. The April streets were soft, the sunlight thin like paper, just enough to warm my cheeks as I walked toward the park. For the next week, messages kept coming. A voicemail from my mother. "We don't know what to do, Alice. They say the house will be sealed off next week. Can you help even a little?" A missed call from my father. No message. Just a sigh cut off halfway. Then Ben, one single text. "Everything's falling apart. You happy now?" I didn't respond. Not because I was happy, but because I was no longer obligated to carry the weight of choices that weren't mine. I still went to work, still grabbed coffee at my usual place, still did my grocery run on Saturdays, and over the weekend I planted a new patch of lavender in the corner of my balcony. My apartment had never been this quiet. No late-night calls, no guilt for turning off my phone on Sundays, no mental checklist of gauze packs for mom or premium coverage payments for dad. One late afternoon, driving past the old neighborhood on the way to an alumni dinner, I paused outside 2487. On the lawn stood a sign, "Bank-owned property, no trespassing." The white wooden gate I'd repainted in 2020 had faded. The oak tree in the yard stood bare, its trunk cracked. No one had bothered to prune it. No dog barking, no guitar from the garage, no smell of Mom's Sunday cinnamon waffles. I didn't get out of the car, I just sat there, window rolled down, letting the wind move through my hair. I looked at that house, once my whole world, and felt distant. I had kept that place alive, not with brute force, but with wire transfers, self-denial, nights spent closing reports so the bills could be paid for others. I didn't have to burn it down. I just stopped carrying buckets to the fire. And it collapsed on its own. My phone vibrated in my bag. Another call. Mom. Then Dad. Then a voicemail I didn't open. I didn't need to hear to know what they'd say. I simply silenced the phone, dropped it back into my bag, and pulled away. I drove slowly, as if leaving behind not just an address, but a role I'd been forced to play. No anger, no blame, just curtain call. That night, I sat in my little kitchen, a warm amber light falling over the old wooden table I'd bought at a flea market, a steaming cup of peppermint tea in my hands. I didn't need to be seen to exist. I didn't need a will to know my worth. I had written it, line by line, with silence, with responsibility, with the choice not to return. For the first time in years, I wasn't wearing a watch. Wasn't checking a calendar, wasn't scanning my inbox. I just sat there listening to the soft murmur of the city beyond my window, and I knew I was finally free. Alice's story is a clear reminder that sacrifice should never become a lifetime obligation just because of family. When love is weighed against injustice and exploitation, walking away isn't betrayal, it's courage. In real life, if you've ever been seen as the stable one who doesn't need anything, remember, you have the right to be acknowledged, to make choices, and to say no without apology. What do you think of Alice's decision? Was she too cold, or just claiming what she rightfully deserved? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.